Design, a practical guide for educators. A very warm welcome to Professor Debrah. The stage is yours.
Hello, I'm Debbie Sickler-White. I'm so happy to be with you today, and I'm excited to share my new book, STEAM, Teaching and Learning Through the Arts and Design, and to talk about how it connects to what we're talking about at this conference and how we can make a positive difference in our students' lives. So let me start sharing my screen. And as I go forward with the computer program, what's happening is with the share screen, it's easier to present in a PDF, so I'll go out because I have a few video clips that I'll show you. So you'll see I'll switch between the two formats a couple of times. Alrighty, let's get started. So when I reviewed my STEAM book and thinking about this conference and the work I do, I've spent several years working with United Nations themes. And so one thing I'm really honored about is that the work I do, and you'll see this in the STEAM book, is it ties to our sustainable goals for education, ensure inclusive and equitable quality education, and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. And so today I'm presenting under aesthetic education, but really the work that I'm doing ties into all of our conference themes, as we'll see. So right here, I'm going to go into the video to introduce my book. So I'm going to do a different screen share so you can see the actual video. Alrighty, and here, let me see if I can play it. So this is the cover artwork, and you're going to see how it connects to the book and its teachings. Let me get to trying to find the cursor here. Okay. STEAM, Teaching and Learning Through the Arts and Design, a practical guide for preschool through 12th grade educators, is a resource book for all people interested in STEAM education. It answers the common question, how do we teach STEAM through the arts and design using best and inclusive practices that recognize STEAM subjects as co-equal disciplines? I designed this book as an independent resource in a user-friendly style for teachers' professional development. Its innovative content and context augments educators' abilities to apply the arts and design and different subjects' academic standards and terminologies to cultivate students' full potential. This book is also well suited for adoption in undergraduate and graduate courses and can be used in conjunction with my textbook, Teaching and Learning in Art Education, Cultivating Students' Potential from Preschool through High School. As we move full steam ahead in STEAM, Teaching and Learning Through the Arts and Design 7 parts, we will learn interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary approaches to STEAM planning, instruction, and assessment by aligning STEAM subjects naturally and addressing relevant and timely issues to foster students' deep understandings. We will explore the artistic behaviors of idea development, observation, imagination and wonderment, persistence, and making creative connections to identify their relevance in STEAM education. And I'll talk about those in more detail as we progress in this presentation. The book's exciting Artist Lessons to Thrive chapters present context-based narratives on historic and contemporary artists and the artistic behaviors that inform their creative works. These chapters include choice-based lessons. Sorry, I thought the volume went way down that one.
Look how fast it's going.
I know. You'll see that that's using the laser engraver.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's getting all the details. Much more details.
You can see we're excited for this because we wanted to get the right engraving and lasering. And so I'm teaching and learning in the STEAM artist students that offer flexibility in employing preschool through 12th grade curricular content that suits educators and students' interests and needs, and available materials and resources. Their art making learning tasks include hands on traditional media and integrated technologies to present a balanced, realistic, and manageable approach to instruction favored in most classrooms. The chapter's STEAM amplifiers delve into related interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary STEAM studies and offer inspirations to take learning and our teaching in multiple directions. We will also examine educators' model applications of STEAM teaching and learning in diverse educational settings. The companion website of this book offers downloadable chapter instructional resources and image rich PowerPoints to facilitate instruction in school, university, and community settings. Now, I'm going to talk about the cover of this artwork that you've got a chance to see how we've created it. Developing the cover artwork of this book illustrates my approach to building new STEAM proficiencies. Pre-service teacher Paige Brenner accompanied me in this journey as an equal partner in its development. Both of us had produced handmade tunnel books before, so when I'm talking about the handmade tunnel books, we're using paper usually as our media and folding paper. Where here you're seeing we're using wood and a laser engraver. Yet we wanted to augment our book design skills with technological applications. We participated in 3D printing, laser cutting engraving machine, and LED lighting training. So we did this at my university's makerspace to integrate these technologies into our tunnel books. Their designs include our inspirations from the Artist Lessons to Thrive artist in the book and our understandings of the book's STEAM amplifiers, including balancing nature and technology. A bright sunshine and rolling hills are adorned with horses, wind turbines, and sustainable transportation. Our collaborative art making processes and training demonstrates our willingness as teachers to acquire new skills, employ STEAM standards, ask experts for help, which we did a lot of that, and work through the challenges that come with creating art and trying new technologies. My father, Richard Sickler, who's in the audience today, I'm really excited about that, became a welcome member of our team. So I packed up our tunnel book and took it down to Florida for his help. And he helped us with re-engineering the book because the side panels where we wanted to insert the paper sections of the book called series, the watercolor paper was too wide and it was making it where we couldn't form a perfect cube for the television set for it to close. So he helped us with re-engineering our design to make it work. So ultimately, we reached our goals of creating informative and well-designed artworks using artistic behaviors and technological skills and can implement what we have learned in our classrooms. So I'm going to stop sharing and go back to the PDF. Oh, I think I did the book. Excuse me. Clicked the wrong. Okay, since this is having me move through, I'm just gonna, there's a few extra video clips, so I'm probably not gonna show them because it has me go back and forth. So when we're thinking about this track of aesthetic education, a lot of times we're familiar with the term STEM. We hear STEM a lot more than we hear STEAM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, where STEAM represents the arts. And so when we do see the arts included, sometimes they're very stereotypical. They're not focusing on what art educators, art students, art teachers value. And that means learning the context and the meaning behind the work that we're doing. So what we'll see a lot of times is people are using art materials, paint perhaps, and they'll say, oh, this is STEAM, but without the vocabularies, without the standards, without the meaning behind it, then it really just is a STEM lesson with art materials rather than context and meaning. So it's important to know that when I talk about STEAM. Also, what's fortunate in many countries across the world is when you do see STEM education policies, many of them do include STEAM for the curriculum. And so STEAM is important because it presents a fuller picture of what students need to know. So think about it. With arts, we're seeing creativity, we're seeing innovations, and we're seeing quality designs that enhance society's products. And so, you'll see one of the things, like, for example, Apple, they'll say designed in California, because that design of the product is important. And for me, as an art educator, my background's teaching in a school. I taught in a school with a high poverty rate of 90% of the children on free and reduced lunch. And so one of the things I saw as an art teacher was I had to spend, and I wanted to spend a lot of time teaching life skills to the children. And so that became a foundation of my teaching, is how can we use art to have discussions and teach life skills that are important to children. And so here are two examples from my textbook where we talk about Maya Lin and the concept of remembrance and how a memorial can help give us hope and help us move forward. And in the first chapter of the book, I have Nick Cave, who's a renowned performing artist, and he has these suits that he developed called sound suits. And for him, they were a form of protection. As an African American man in the United States, he felt that during the Rodney King beatings, that this would give him a form of protection where people didn't know what color he was, they didn't know anything about him, they just saw this fancy suit. And so with that, all of us as humans need protection. And that's important. And so that's where we can tie in ideas like bullying prevention, how we can protect others, how we can be good people. And so with that idea and with that foundation, I use that as a guide to develop most of the STEAM books. So most of the STEAM books chapters are dedicated to these artist lessons to thrive, where they're shorter in the textbook. I expanded them into full chapters in the STEAM book. And so when we're thinking about the way that we teach, I like to use the approach authentic instruction, and that is transformative because it's real. When we think of the word authentic, it's genuine. And it defines how our instructional methods encourage students to want to participate in STEAM learning tasks, make personal discoveries, and form enduring understandings that have sustained values in their lives. So with this model, we're co-equal partners with our students. As educators, we don't have all of the answers. We let students problem solve and make discoveries on their own. We give them choices in the learning task at hand. And so when I developed the model for my book, I wanted something that was different than I was seeing in other STEAM lesson plans on the website, something that I wasn't seeing in current STEAM books on best practices for the arts and design. And so the model that I developed contains artistic behaviors, that's one part of it, interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary studies, teacher and student choice, and hands-on learning. And I'll break these down as we go forward. So the artistic behaviors that I selected, these aren't the only ones. So when you're teaching, please know you could add your own artistic behaviors to the 5 that I presented in the book. They're just a foundation, but you're certainly welcome to build on them. So artistic behaviors describe the mindsets, habits, intuitions and behaviors that artists and designers cultivate over time to inform their professional practices. So what this is showing is that artists, they use idea development. That's so important. How are they fostering ideas? How are they building them? Where are they getting inspirations from? Are they communicating a particular message that they need to share with society? So that's one. Observation is another, where we need observation skills. They help us notice details. They help us see things from different perspectives. And you'll see that these apply to all of the STEM subjects. When you're working with scientists, technology specialists, engineers, mathematicians, they're doing this. They're using idea development, observation. And then, as all creative people, we use our imaginations to think about what if. And we might inspire wonderment in ourselves, but also with the works we create, we could spark wonderment in other people's lives. And then the next one I really want to focus on as an important one for teaching our students, in addition to the three I just discussed: persistence. Think about when things are hard. And we have wonderful inventions throughout the history that show where something doesn't work out the way we expect it to. We've had failures. We've had to try and try again. And so having that sense of persistence and not giving up and trying something in a new way is a great skill for ourselves and our students. And then the last one I address is making creative connections. And I love this one because this is where we get to be really creative and think about how things might come together that we, at initial thought, we might not think of belonging together. And I think that is what helps us get new innovations and move forward with creative and innovative ideas. So the next part of my model talks about interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary education. And so basically, these are integrated methods for teaching. Multidisciplinary is at a lower level where you're combining subjects, where interdisciplinary goes to the next level. So we're going to see 2 or more integrated STEAM subjects. Now, what you're noticing here with interdisciplinary is they're equally coming together and informing each other. And so that's where I talked about where we might see some so-called STEAM lessons where they're including paint, but art is not taught as an equal subject. And so that's where we're getting interdisciplinary studies coming together as equal partners. And then we're going to build students' deep knowledge as they're learning how subjects combine. And this is natural in life. This is what we do in life. So very important. And then the next level, which is the top level, is called transdisciplinary. And transdisciplinary STEAM integration holistically conjoins multiple disciplines and removes subject boundaries. So this is important. We're not just saying, oh, I'm art, oh, I'm science, oh, I'm technology. We just come together as equal partners. Those barriers dissolve. And what's so nice about that is by removing these subject boundaries, we're deepening understandings, we're transforming knowledge, and we're providing innovative solutions. So as far as classroom practices are concerned, a lot of times the work we'll be doing alone in our classroom can be interdisciplinary. Usually transdisciplinary is on a larger level. And so what that means is we might be doing a school-wide project, we might be doing a community-based project, and we're bringing in different experts and working together, usually to create something big and something very special. So when we think about our skills, our strengths, who we are as educators, we're not experts in every subject. We have our disciplines, and we could be good and we could be inquisitive about learning other subjects, but They could be out of our realm for our specialty. And so it's okay. Acknowledge that we have different strengths. That's very important. Some disciplines will be outside of our specialized area. And so it's important to know going forward that we don't have to be perfect in each STEAM discipline to do something. And so you saw how my student and I began creating the artwork for the book's cover. We hadn't done 3D printing, we hadn't done laser engraving, we hadn't worked with LED trainings. And so we went to our university's makerspace, which you see a picture of it here. They're giving my class a tour. And they helped us because they had the experts there to show us how to do it. So it's good to ask for help. And I always like to say this when you're doing something collaborative. If somebody says no, okay, they're just not the right person at the right time. Keep asking, find that right person who will collaborate with you. And then you could do great things with your students that you're really proud of. And then another thing that we can do as educators is we can augment our skills by participating in professional development, and then collaborating with partners, which can be outside of a school system. And this is great for our curriculum. It keeps us interested in teaching. It keeps students engaged in learning. So one thing that teachers and students get very frustrated by is if they don't have choices in teaching and learning. And that's equally important for teachers and students. So with this design, when I wrote the book, I made it open-ended where I give enough foundations to give you ideas to take the curriculum where you want to take it, give your students choices, and choices could be the themes that they're studying, local issues that are important to them, maybe something's happening in the school that needs to be studied, their choice of materials, the choice of inspiration artists. So there's so many choices, and I think it's great to look at the lessons that we teach from local perspectives going all the way to global, and then that shows how we're interconnected. But it's also really important to address local community issues and needs. So with the format of my book, I just want to show you how I'm offering those teacher and student choices. So in the Artist Lessons to Thrive chapters, what you'll see is I have a narrative on the artist that I'm presenting. And then I move into an open-ended lesson plan where I'm giving choices for art educators on what they can do. I include questions to guide discussions. I have learning targets that could be turned into objectives. And then I include, we're in the United States, so we're using the national visual arts standards, but you can adapt these to the standards that you use in your community. They just give you an idea of a direction that you may take. And then what's really important to me is, like, for us in the United States, we're certified teaching kindergarten through 12th grade. So we have elementary schools, middle schools, high schools. And so a lot of times for us being K through 12 certified is we can take an idea or a concept and we know how to break it down to a lower level. Maybe we're working with early childhood elementary students, or we can take it up to a high school level. And so that's where I wanted to give readers directions on, okay, if you want to do this lesson, here's some ideas if you're teaching the youngest children, and then going all the way up to the advanced high school students. Then in the next section, what you'll see after that lesson plan and after those narratives, what I'm showing is what I call STEAM amplifiers. So we all know how we know our curriculum best. We know how much time we have with students. We know how much time we could devote to a lesson plan or a unit of study. And so what I've done with each chapter is I have usually about 4 STEAM amplifiers where you have your basic core lesson where you've learned about the artist, the context, the story behind it, but then you could build on it with different choices. For example, designing future video games. How can video games be an art form? What role does music play in the gaming experience? And then I'll show you in a few minutes an example of how this video game includes wind turbines. And so we're learning about sustainable energies. Another thing, like I discussed when you saw the presentation of how we made our tunnel book, hands-on learning is really important to me. I think technologies are great. I love using them, but we all know some of us still have technology barriers. Some of us don't have access to them as regularly. So I really like to find ways that we can bring in the hands-on learning and then integrate the technologies with them. And so here, these two images show work I've done with the incredible art teacher, Monica Leister. She's at Tennessee School for the Blind, and we've had a partnership for about 12 years now, where my university students go to her school and then her students come to our university campus, and we make stop motion animations. And so what's great for us is that because her students are low vision and blind, we have both populations, tactile learning is really important. So we're creating sets. We're using a lot of tactile objects, and then we use stop motion animations as our vehicle to showcase our work to the public. And so here you can see where one of her students is working during the pandemic, and this is our stop motion animation, Where Are the Bees? And it talks about the negative impacts of pesticides on bee populations. So you can see the student hand spraying the bees. I'll show more about that in a later chapter. Talk about that. So here's once you could see the hands-on technology. So we had it with Tennessee School for the Blind and the work we do there. And then this is a different project. This is actually called a book rather than a stop motion animation. And you could see my student, Paige Brenner. This was her last year as a pre-service teacher. She's in her first year of teaching now. And then at the bottom, you see my dad, who is, he just looked at the design and he's like, this is all wrong. This is all wrong. And we problem solved to fix it. So, having those experts and being able to make mistakes, being persistent is really part of that process as we brought our hands on. But as you can see, the hands-on just brings beautiful artistry because the sheets of paper in there are hand-painted. We hand-constructed the bridge in there. Paige hand-built the sustainable train. So moving into our artistic behaviors, I talked about the 5 that I presented in this book. And remember, you can add your own. So this isn't a complete list. But I did focus on idea development for 3 chapters. And I used the artist Namjoon Paik, who was inspired by the American highway system. And what's interesting with his work is, technologies keep updating. And so it's a really interesting aesthetic and museum question, seeing how we replace older technologies. How does that change the meaning and the purpose of the artwork? Another one I wrote about Alma Thomas. I'll show you in greater detail. And she did a whole series of eclipse paintings. And then Debrah Butterfield, there's a different image I use in the book, but the Rights Association would have charged a lot of money to show it digitally. So I'm sorry that I don't have it in this presentation. But when you download the free resources for the book and the PowerPoint, I have a link where you can see the actual work. And so the one that I show in the book is one of her famous horses, but she's using tsunami debris. And she constructed it with plastics and buoys and things found off the coast of Alaska that had drifted over from Japan from the tsunami. And so, that idea of coming up with this idea to make a horse out of garbage, mold it, and give it this function and form as a teaching tool. So I focus on idea development with those artists. And like I said, I'd talk a little bit more about Alma Thomas. Here you see Alma Thomas in her classroom. She taught mostly middle school, but she taught for about 40 years. And she taught in the United States in a time of segregation. And so she was a real advocate in her community for getting her kids out in the community, breaking those segregation barriers, and getting her students to become of the art world, become leaders. And she had a really profound influence. And she was the first African American woman to have a solo exhibition at the Whitney. And so, with her as a teacher, they have the story that, she suddenly became an artist after she retired from teaching, and she became famous, in her 70s. And that just wasn't true. She was a teaching artist. She created during her whole career. But obviously, when you retire, you have a little bit more time to focus on your work. And so, with that idea of idea development, this is her space series. And, I can imagine this. I've done this myself. Instead of having a big studio, she painted at her kitchen table. And she came up with this form, this media, this unique style that was all of her own. These patterns are called Alma stripes. And she was influenced by the technologies of her day, where they were going out into space and getting pictures of solar eclipses, things that society had never seen before. And these are her interpretations. And so, going back to our work with Tennessee School for the Blind, using Alma Thomas as an inspiration, if you go to the NASA website, they have so many resources for educators. It's phenomenal. And there you can see images like the one we have in the background. You could just find great pictures. And so we incorporated this into our stop motion animation with Tennessee School for the Blind. And so when you're using NASA images, ideas of space, technologies, with the kids, I want you to know you can go purely factual if you want to, but you can also have some fun fantasy like we did. So the students at Tennessee School for the Blind with Ms. Leister came up with the idea of having a robo-bee out in space. And so our bees left Earth. They were really frustrated because we just weren't taking care of the planet. And they went out to space and they met the robo-bee, but it was too hot out in space for them right next to the sun. So to make a long story short, they had to come back to Earth and just reprimand us humans and say, hey, you need to do a better job. And so here you can see a bit of the behind the scenes with that. We use green screen technologies. And this, once again, I do want to share working with Ms. Leister at Tennessee School for the Blind. As teachers, when we first started stop motion animation, we didn't know it. We saw examples of it. We didn't know how to do it. And we just started to figure it out together with our students. And so we've gotten better over the years as we've built this partnership. And we do use assistive technologies. And it's a wonderful experience for my pre-service teachers because they do learn how to teach art to students with visual impairments. And that's something that Ms. Leister hears very, very often. Like, how do you teach art to students with low vision or who are blind? And we demonstrate we can do it, and we do it well. Here's just a little bit more of the background, different scenes that you can see that we did. So here, Ms. Leister has a honeycomb. It's 3D printed so that students can get a feel, tactile, to see, learn more about bees. And then you could just see how like the backgrounds, the sets that we create are just layered with papers and textures that the kids could feel. The next big idea is observation. And so I have Hokusai's The Great Wave. I have Claude Monet. And then I show Desert View. And with these, with observation, Hokusai, he was known for his outstanding observation. So if you look at the wave, they talk about how they look like claws coming at you. And they used recent technologies and took a picture of waves actually from that coast, and they looked exactly like those claws that he depicted. And he just dedicated his life to observation. And so, most likely, he did not see this great wave experience, but it was retold to him, and then he used his visual knowledge, visual database to create it. And one of the misconceptions about this work is a lot of people will call it a tsunami. We've seen signs with tsunami warnings and they show this image, but it's most likely it was a rogue wave, and I talk about that. And then I talk about Monet's and vision loss and how that affects the observations that we make. And then desert view, I'll show you in a minute. So this is a video where I'm not going to switch out of this one yet, but this is a video where our government has resources where we can download as educators for free, NOAA, for example, and we can get little animation clips. And what this shows is the animation of a wave and how it starts. So students can see how a tsunami starts and it grows and then it comes to shore. And then this one I do want to show you. So I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint. So bear with me here because I want you to see how studying contemporary artists leads to issues of today. And so we're going to look at the contemporary artist, Fred Cabote. So let me stop sharing my screen and then go to the PowerPoint. And you can see there's the tsunami. I mean, the tsunami illustration. Okay, here's Ed Cabote, and he's one of the artists. So at Desert View, they created this wonderful watchtower in the 1930s. And they've turned it, the National Park Services, this is Grand Canyon National Park in the United States, and they turned it into a contemporary cultural tribal site to honor the indigenous cultures who lived on the land. Because, as you know, in the United States, we did take away Native American lands, and so this is an attempt to start bringing the people back in touch with their lands. So let me see if I can get it to play. No, it's not doing it on this one. I don't know why. Oh, well, if I can't get it, I don't know. It seems like it's connecting too. It's weird. It's like moving around my iPad instead of here. So I'm going to try to stop sharing. I can't get it. Here we go. There, I got it.
The Grand Canyon Watchtower was opened in 1932. So it was during the time building up to that, I assume about a year before, that my grandfather was working on the murals here in this particular room. I feel like the National Park's recent initiatives to highlight Desert View as a cultural center where people can experience the authenticity of Native cultures, I feel like that's very important. I also feel like those voices should permeate all throughout the canyon, because this is our home. This is the home of our mothers, the home of our fathers.
Okay. I'm trying to get out of here. Let's see. There. Okay, and I'm going to go back to my PDF. Reason I have to switch is because I can't see my screen as I present in the PowerPoint. Sorry. Go forward. Apologize for this. But you could see, as we were looking at Ed Caboti, what's really important is having original indigenous voices of people speak for themselves rather than being interpreted through academics and scholars. And so I really valued that opportunity to work with Ed Caboti and learn about his grandfather's works, who created the original murals, and then how he's a contemporary artist today. And he's using his art form, not only visual art, but he's also a musician. And he's talking about issues that affect their land still today. There's so much arsenic out in the Colorado River area, lack of water. So there's some very, very real issues that are contemporary today that can continue to be problematic. Next one is imagination and wonderment. And so I wanted to bring in some artists that people knew. So I brought in George Lucas, because we could all see how he used his imagination and wonderment to bring the story to life. And then the next example is Genova Chen and Kelly Santiago, who created an artwork video game called Flower, and it was designed as an artwork. And then I have Camille Utterback with interactive artworks, and then Janet Eshelman, who does installations with NASA produced netting. So it's really wonderful fibers that could be used. I'm not going to click this video clip because you see how hard it is to get out. But the idea of flower is the flower starts off as a plant, a flower in a really bad condition, in a big busy city. Everything's very overcrowded and not welcoming. And the flower has a dream to go out into nature. And so, as a video game player, we get the experience of traveling with the flower, collecting petals. And so, one thing Genova Chen did, he was really inspired by California's rolling hills. He's from Shanghai, and so he had experienced that vast openness, but he also valued urban life. And so what's that healthy balance between urban technologies and sustainability? And so one parts of the game, which gets very emotional, is the flower petal goes through these electrical lines and gets sizzled, and you hear that sound. And when they're by the wind turbines, it's safer. So he talks about renewable energies through the video game. And so for the STEAM studies, as part of the amplifiers, if we're teaching about this, let's teach kids the parts of a wind turbine, how have they become more efficient? What can we do with wind turbines to make them more safer for wildlife? How can we reduce noise emissions? And so where could we build wind farms? So these are all issues students can discuss. And then the next one is persistence. And I had Letha Soizwapi. He has a TED Talk that is fabulous. I do recommend that you look it up. And as an artist, a designer, he taught himself coding. He was trained as a graphic designer. And he talked about how failure was something that was a very important part of his artistic development. And so I think that's a great lesson for students. Jim Henson, I use the idea of laughter, social emotional learning, and how, with puppets, through laughter, we can talk about a lot of issues in our classroom. And then Sally Blakemore, she's a phenomenal artist, and she has dyslexia and synesthesia. And I'm going to show you a close up on the next slide of her. And so she's fabulous because she didn't learn to read until she was about 8 or 9 years old. And what she would have to do is sit in a dark closet. And that helped her process the letters better. And she would have to turn and rotate her books to try to read. And so as an artist and designer, she's engineered over 200 books published. And she makes them in the round to stimulate student learning. And then here's Letha Soizwapi, #1 travel app in South Africa. And so just like I said, focused on failure, persistence, and teaching himself to code. Great example. Great TED Talk. And then with his work, I talked about sustainable transportation. The United Nations has set the goals to expand sustainable public transportation and provide access to safe, affordable, accessible, and sustainable transportation systems for all. The goals pay special attention to the needs of those in vulnerable situations, women, children, persons with disabilities, and older persons. So that's really important. And then here, just laughter. School testing can be so serious, and how can we bring the human qualities into education? And so, how can we have laughter in the classroom and fun and have real substantial conversations? And so the benefits of laughter include greater personal satisfaction, improved moods, less pain, and a better immune system. So can't go wrong there. And Kermit's a great ambassador. And then the last artistic development I focused on was creative engagement. So what I did is I took artists who don't seem to belong together, and I talked about how their environments impacted the artwork that they made. The next one is creative connections, and I looked at how artists used compiled data that they collected or was collected by others after them to produce and preserve artworks. And then the last one I have is the idea of travel, movement. And so let's go places was the last theme that I introduced. And I want to just leave with Patty Borishina. She is a ceramicist. And when she was first producing her works in the 70s, she was really kind of discriminated against for being a female. They would leave her out of talks of kiln technologies, and they just felt that females would not be able to understand masculine dominated kiln culture. And then apparently hot rods were really big at the time too. So she put the two together to create this hot rod kiln, showing that, hey, I could do all this, I know it. And that also ties to UNESCO goals, making sure girls, students with disabilities also have access to equal education and learn those technical skills. So closing out, I do want you to know, and this is under my name, and you could access this, you could scan this too. I have lots of free resources for you that you can download, 20 PowerPoints, one from each chapter, so it has all the beautiful visuals. And then I have 60 instructional resources that you can use. And then that is the end of my presentation. So I'm going to stop sharing, and I welcome your questions. Thank you so much. Is it like inclusive with visual impaired students in regular classrooms? That's a great question. So in Tennessee, I'm in Murfreesboro, and we have a state school that's about 30 some miles away from us, and it's Tennessee School for the Blind. So that is a specialized school because they are teaching life skills such as walking, cooking, job and career schools in addition to the academics. So they are residential, where students will come from all over the state, and then they'll come on a Monday morning and leave Friday afternoon to go home if they are far away. So they are a school just for students with low vision or who are blind. But for my pre-service teachers who are going to be art teachers, they're going to be working in regular classrooms. And so they're getting that experience. And those who graduate come back to me and are so grateful because students also at Tennessee School for Blind, some of them have multiple disabilities. And so it just really gives them a foundations for working in so-called regular classrooms. Thank you for asking. Any other questions? And if you have others, you're welcome to email them. And as we wait for last, yes.
Thank you, Deborah, for a
Sure.
wonderful session. And um, I cannot thank you enough for telling us about how you are teaching art to the visually impaired children. I cannot comprehend this thought around my brain that this is even possible. And
Yeah.
we appreciate your time and effort. Thank you, everyone who have joined this session. there is any question, and if you would like to connect with Debrah, you can reach out to us, and we will connect you with Debrah, and you can maybe share and exchange the resources that you have in store for us. Thank you once again, and it was a very, very interesting session for me as a person
Thank you for being here.
who's not familiar with this concept.
Yeah, thank you. And don't be afraid to make mistakes and ask for help.